our Zoom room and also our moderator for our last session. Um, Hello, Romo Luis. You here?
Yes, I am.
Okay. How are you, Romo?
I'm very good, very
Oh,
delightful.
yes. Yeah, thank you, Romo. And also we can see Dr. Clarissa. Good morning, Clarissa. I believe there's morning there.
Yeah, good morning. It's 8 a.m. here in Edinburgh, but it's not as bright as in Indonesia in the morning, so it's still dark here.
Oh,
But happy to see all of you, especially Danny and Sunny. They are kind of my classmates at the university. Yeah.
okay. Thank you, Dr. Clarissa. We're also glad to have you join us, sharing your insights about our conference theme today. So, ladies and gentlemen, for our last sessions, your speakers, Dr. Catherine Clarissa, MSc PhD from University of Edinburgh, Scotland, will be moderated by Romo Anthony Wijaya SCY. Also, we call him usually Romo Luis. Um, about the interdisciplinary research and innovation. Um, Please enjoy and don't forget to hydrate yourself well for our last plenary session. So, to Romo Luis, the time and place I'm giving to you.
Thank you, Mr. Denny. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me show you a little bit information about our speaker for this afternoon. Okay. Professor Catherine Clarissa, she got his Bachelor of Nursing Science and Professional Degree in Nursing from University Indonesia. And then from her advanced student until certificate simulation-based clinical education got from University of Edinburgh, Scotland. As you see from the presentation slide, he is a very expert in nursing, life sciences, especially, and from her teaching experience, you can see how he is very involved in nursing, especially as a guest lecturer and many else. So what I believe when I read this CV is Professor Catherine will presenting uh, the one who project is working on. I believe it's from that's me, oral presentation from 2023, if I'm not mistaken. A realist review I psychological psychosocial intervention in neurological rehabilitation for the young adults following an acquired brain injury. I think it will be her focus for today presentation. So without wait any longer, let's welcome our presenter for this afternoon, Professor Clarissa or Catherine. You prefer which one to be called? Time is yours.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Romulus. I'm going to share my screen, and just to let you know, I'm not a professor yet, but I'll take it as a prayer for me, maybe in the near future I can become a professor. But anyway, can you all see my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to move around to just try. Yeah. So as introduced to all of you in this occasion, I'm very delighted to be invited here. It's always a pleasure because I'm an Indonesian too, so it's always nice to speak to other nurses, and probably in this conference will be beyond nursing as well, researchers from Indonesia and beyond. So I'm going to talk about a Yarns Transition Project. So because of the theme of the conference, so I will highlight the interdisciplinary and innovativeness of our research project. So our research aim is to develop a nurse-led psychosocial rehab intervention for young adults after acquired brain injury. So just to acknowledge our funders, our project is a 3-year project. We are funded by a nursing organization called the RCN Foundation in partnership with SameU. So if you are not familiar with SameU, I don't know if people here watch Game of Thrones. I personally haven't watched it, but if you know Emilia Clarke, so one of the actors in that series, so she experienced a stroke, actually 2 occasions of stroke. So that's why she created this foundation charity, we call it in the UK, to help young adults to rebuild their life after acquired brain injury. So that's a little bit background about SameU. So if you probably after this curious, you may Google it. So Emilia Clarke. So when I was preparing for this presentation, I was reflecting on our research project about the yarns because I have been involved in this project since 2020, actually. So I will explain later on the next slide. But it started off as a kind of smaller project. It was supposed to be a 6 months project when we started off, but because of the COVID pandemic, it got extended, and then I think we ended up finishing that project around 9-10 months or so. So we already included all a mix of disciplines within our research team when we started with this small project, with the yarns project. But when I kind of think of, is it interdisciplinary, is it multidisciplinary, or is it transdisciplinary? So just to gauge the attendance here, the audience, if you can join us, join me in the little bit polls and word cloud. So it's similar like Mentimeter, if you're more familiar with Mentimeter. If you just scan the QR code or use your browser and then add the event code, you should be able to join the Woo Club. I can see like 3 people here already joining. And I can see Danny taking the phone and trying to join as well. So hope that it's quite straightforward to join. But I realized the last time I went back to Indonesia, everything is with QR code.
Yes.
I think you all are high tech there. So yeah, so I can see 5 people. I also asked Danny if he could kind of share it in the chat, so all the attendees can also join. The more the merrier. Okay. I don't know like how many people are listening to the conversation now, but we'll just give a couple of more minutes to allow people to join.
Dear participants, you can scan the QR code from the screen, or it's available on room chat as well.
Yeah. don't worry, it's not kind of assessing your knowledge or anything. It's just to get you all involved and wanting to know if you have any experience in kind of collaborative research projects. Okay, probably I'll just start slowly because I believe that people can still also join us also using the code there on the top. So just wanting to ask you all about collaboration. Don't think about the interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary yet, but collaboration. What comes to your mind when you think about collaboration, research collaborations with researchers from other disciplines, working together with other disciplines? Mm-hmm. Like novelty, teamwork. Mm-hmm. So if the same word picked by different people, it will become bigger. So I can see teamwork is kind of the main selected word. Yeah, relation, interesting, together, communication. Mm-hmm. I can see kind of communication there, teamwork. Mm-hmm. Interesting, pleasure. So I suppose it will give us kind of more rewarding feeling working with other people. Mm-hmm. I think we have kind of 4 main selected words there. Okay, so yeah, I can see it's still kind of changing a bit. Mm-hmm. No, awesome. Become the number one with the heart. Okay, interesting. Yeah. So if I can kind of move on to the second one, but I can see people are still joining us. We've got 25 people now. But don't worry, I still have a couple more questions after this. So yeah, I'm going to slowly move to the second one later on. But just to start off with the concepts itself. So I found this systematic review, literature review from 2007. It's quite old now. It's almost 20 years ago. But it has kind of really, really clear ideas of what is actually multidisciplinary, what is interdisciplinary, and what is transdisciplinary. And from the disciplines, we can see that the key message here from those 3 concepts, it will be 2 or more disciplines. But from the problem definition, is from the theoretical point of view, multidisciplinary has the same question, different paradigm, but related, different questions, but still related. Whereas interdisciplinary is kind of using the same language, but the models are kind of can be used across disciplines. Transdisciplinary is very interesting because it's using the new language that is broader than any one discipline, so it doesn't belong to any type of disciplines. So research style from multidisciplinary, they work together in parallel, whereas interdisciplinary is using different types of data. And for the transdisciplinary, it's kind of merging all of them. And interestingly, it's kind of may result in new fields. So, and for the focus of our presentation today, we'll touch on the interdisciplinary part because that's what our Yarns Transition project sets in. So now that we kind of get the little gist of what is the difference between multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and transdisciplinary. So thinking about your own research, have you been involved in those type of kind of research projects, either multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, or transdisciplinary, or none of the above? And again, thinking about your own research, is it, do you work in parallel, kind of having different questions maybe, but related to each other in the multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary? You're kind of answering the same question from different point of views, or transdisciplinary is kind of looking from one new theory, doesn't really belong to any type of discipline, and probably resulting in a new field. Actually, it's really interesting. I can see the audience have multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary. Okay, it's multidisciplinary. So multidisciplinary. And none of the above, and that's absolutely fine. Sometimes we, especially for PhD projects, it's very independent, so you wouldn't be able to kind of work with different people. Probably you have different supervisors from different fields, but because it's the purpose of a PhD is kind of training, research training, to be an independent researcher. So it usually doesn't involve any other researchers. It needs to be the person. And multidisciplinary. So transdisciplinary, I don't think I have my experience as well in transdisciplinary. I don't know, maybe in the future. But I suppose it's creating a new field. I think it's really interesting, isn't it? But multidisciplinary, I can see interdisciplinary. So I'm going to move in for the sake of time. So this is the same literature review. So after they reviewed the literature, and then they suggested, they propose this definition. So I'm not going to read it for you, but just wanted to highlight kind of the key points that they included in the definition, which we kind of already seen in the tables anyway. So it needs to be, for interdisciplinary research, it needs to be from 2 or more disciplines. And then it's using the conceptual model or theoretical framework from those disciplines. So it doesn't say that it should belong to one discipline, but that can be used across disciplines. And then using the study design and methodology that is not limited to any field, and the use of perspectives and skills of the involved disciplines. So that's kind of the key of interdisciplinary, because in multidisciplinary, you might have more than 2 disciplines, but doesn't necessarily using the same research framework or theory. So, but that's 20 years ago. So how about the recent one? So there's another framework or concepts discussed in 2017. As we can see, they also kind of distinguish between transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and interdisciplinary. And again, just for the sake of time, so I'm just going to highlight the interdisciplinary. So actually, what they propose is not really different from the paper, the 2007 papers. So researchers from different disciplines work jointly. They don't really necessarily say, oh, at least 2 disciplines to address a common problem. So the problem needs to be kind of across disciplines. It's the same problem they want to tackle. And some integration of perspectives occurs, which quite similar with the previous definition, but contributions remain anchored in their own disciplines. So what I interpret it as the results can be interpreted in each discipline, how they tackle the same problem. So that's from the 2017, so it's quite recent one. And another, the conference theme is also innovation. So innovation is one aspect that we always kind of, it's like a buzzword. We always say, oh, it's innovative, but actually what is the main components of innovation? So Barlow 2017, if you're kind of working kind of innovation field, you might be familiar with this definition. So it needs to be an outcome in a process. So it doesn't have to be the final product, but the process itself, it can be innovated. It involves the act of turning an idea or invention. So it can be an idea or invention, kind of creating something from scratch into something that can be sold to customers or somehow made practical use of. So probably from my point of view, in nursing, so we don't really tend to solve anything. Well, probably if you're kind of working in the tech industry, because we know that nurses now also work in tech industry as well, and maybe you sold something based on your invention or innovative idea. But in terms of research, because we're going to talk about more about research, so I would say it's the kind of the second part that somehow make practical use of. So because in research, we want to have our findings implemented in policies. We want them to be implemented in clinical practice to improve our patient outcomes. So that's the two things that we can kind of take on the idea itself, or we can invent something. It can be a new concept, a new theory, but also it needs to be practical. It needs to be used for greater good. So again, if you still kind of connect to the same link, the WU Club, so the same word cloud, thinking about your own research, innovativeness. So again, because we tend to use innovative kind of like, oh, it's innovative without really thinking deeply. But after I introduce the components, let's say, an inventions or idea, maybe translate it into a product, depending on your own field, but it can be also kind of an outcome in terms of some ideas, maybe concepts or framework or policies that you can implement in your clinical practice. Again, novelty, I noticed that from our previous word cloud as well. New, unique. So it needs to be something novel. And interestingly, innovation doesn't have to be new. So I mentioned earlier about process. So it can be improving process. So thinking about nursing, for example, in clinical practice, we have the procedures of doing something. So if we clarify, we improve the standard operating procedure to make it smoother, let's say, I don't know, the flow of admitting patients to the hospital, for example. In the previous practice, it might be kind of a bit convoluted and it's a bit confusing, but after we kind of improve the process, it becomes kind of clear. So it can be also called innovations as well. So I think looking at the word cloud here, we don't have the winner actually here. Because the size of the word. I like this creativity. Yeah, I think people have their own ideas of innovation, but we can see creativity, unique, different, positive changes. I like that. Problem solving, definitely, because I think that's the main purpose of innovation. Because at the end of the day, if you created something great and creative, but if it's not implemented and change something, it can't be said as innovation as well. So yeah, definitely downbreaking, incredible, expanding. So logical and caring. So I like that element of nursing there. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. So in the UK context, we have this public body called UK Research and Innovation. So they kind of probably similar to BIN. Oh no, not BIN. What is the Indonesian organization, the government body that gives funding? Well, I'm really bad at this.
Kemenko.
Yeah.
Kemenko funding.
Or LIPI maybe, or yeah.
Uh,
The one kind of funding the public, the government body that funds research in Indonesia. Well, this is kind of an equivalent of that. Yeah, probably LIPI. BIN is intelligence, so probably LIPI. So according to UKRI, UK Research and Innovation, so they have this kind of guidance of how, when we conduct research, because it's public money, so we don't want to spend public money as waste. So we always want to have research that is really impactful for the public. So based on this definition, so responsible research and innovation, I kind of highlighted the main key issue about the related to innovation as well. It needs to be promoting creativity and opportunities for science and innovation that are socially desirable and undertaking in the public interest. So I mentioned earlier, in terms of innovation, it needs to be used. Otherwise, it's not considered as innovative. So in the context of UKRI, we are driven to do research that it's important for the public and then can be used for their public interest. So I'm going to start talking about my research project, not really my own research project, the team that I've been involved in. So our focus we are focusing on young adults after acquired brain injury. So just to give you a bit of context, maybe highly more about the UK setting, but globally we know that acquired brain injury is the leading cause of disability. So acquired brain injury here includes stroke, includes also traumatic brain injury as well. So we know that it's a leading cause of disability. So and thinking about the socio-economic burden, it's really high. We know that in the UK, especially, I have the statistics on the next slide, and I'm sure that it will be similar in other parts of the world. Most of people experiencing the traumatic brain injury or traffic accident that caused brain injuries, usually young people, because I don't know, they ride motorcycles, thinking about Indonesia, because we have a lot of motorcycles back home. So it's mostly people who are kind of in the working age that kind of experience that. So the socioeconomic burden is high, as much as 15 billion and 26 billion per year in the UK context. And as I mentioned, mostly young adults that have the ABI. It's because the traumatic brain injury, the kind of from road traffic accidents, for example, falls. So they are quite high in numbers. And to think about the rehab process, I think in clinical practice, we are so good at kind of saving people, treating people in the acute part of it, but thinking ahead, because young adults, usually they recover quicker compared to the older counterparts. So that's why the recovery process, we need to really think about that, how to kind of help them to build their life, especially if they're still kind of in this working age, how they return to work, how they return to study. But that area seems to be overlooked. We are good kind of saving people in the hospital, and then after they are discharged, we don't really, we tend to overlook their needs after work. So the evidence has already shown their unmet needs, especially psychosocial aspects of beyond the physical aspect, the psychological aspect and the social aspects among young adults. So this is the statistics from the UK context. So every 90 seconds, someone in the UK is admitted to the hospital with ABI, and every 3 minutes with head injury, and every 4 minutes with stroke. So just to give you a bit of context about the statistic itself. So I mentioned earlier that I was involved in kind of a smaller scope of project. So our first project was called Yarns. So young adults rehab needs and experiences following stroke. So at the beginning, we kind of focus on stroke, although we branch out to include acquired brain injury. So what we found in our previous study, what we did, we searched the digital accounts of young adults after stroke from social media accounts, from videos, books, blogs, and then we analyze it. And one of the key findings from the digital accounts, from the stories of young adults after stroke, nurses play a key role in young adults' recovery. So after we finished this project, the funder give us funding to develop a PG cert neuro rehab and care for nurses. So that's kind of the impact of our first small project. If you are interested to read more, I have this QR code there. So after we finished that study, we secured another grant, and this time we branch out to include acquired brain injury. So we include the traumatic brain injury as well. So that's why we call our study, our project Yarns Transitions. So we're kind of transitioning. And for this project, it's a 3-year funded project, and our aim is to develop nurse-led holistic neuro rehab intervention to support young adults, the psychosocial needs of young adults after acquired brain injury. So in the context of our study, we define young adults as 18 to 45 years old. So again, reflecting on the conference themes, for those who haven't been to the UK or don't really know much about the countries, we actually have 4 countries in the United Kingdom. So I'm based here in Scotland, in Edinburgh, but the UK has 4 devolved countries. So consists of Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So from the previous Yarns project, we already have research partners from all over the UK. So at least we have 1 representative from each country in the UK. And I will also explain about the innovation later. So, but interdisciplinarity and innovation are at the heart of our project. This is the current team to show you the interdisciplinarity in our research project. So mostly our nurses, because we are based in nursing studies at the Edinburgh Uni, but we do have colleagues also from different disciplines. I'm not sure. So for example, Colin Chandler here, he's a physiologist. I'm not sure if in Indonesia we have those kind of field. So he's well, again, I might be wrong, but his expertise is around anatomy and physiology of the human body. So we work together in teaching the nursing students around anatomy and physiology, whereas I'm kind of focusing more about the applicability of those knowledge in nursing care. So we have Colin as well as a physiologist there. And our research fellow is also a psychologist. So we can see that we have 3 different kind of fields, and Rosie Stenhouse is a mental health nurse. So if we count kind of, that's a separate discipline. So we have kind of different people from different disciplines. And we are also fortunate to have, we can fund a scholarship within our research project. So we have Carolina doing MSCR, so Master by Research, under our project as well. So that's kind of the core theme of Yarns Transitions. And as I mentioned, we have project partners. So the main role of our partners are to be our advisory board. So they give advice to our project. So This can be giving feedback of our direction to make sure that our research is really, really at the heart of the public interest. So it needs to be relatable to clinical practice. It needs to be relevant to the current evidence. It needs to be evidence-based. It needs to be also tackling the problems of young adults. So I'll explain to you later what we call them expert by experience. In the UK, we also use the term service users. So they are the patients, basically. That's the young adults, but we call them expert by experience because they are the experts by their experience. So they have the lived experience of young adults recovering after acquired brain injury. So we have people, not only academics, but we also have clinicians. So we have a physio, we have OT. Jonathan is a consultant in medicine. We have kind of people from nurse academics, and we also have stroke nurse consultant. And the rest of the list, they are the service users, the young adults, and each of them comes from different parts of the UK that I mentioned earlier on the map. So this really highlights the interdisciplinary aspect of what our project is focusing on, because we are not focusing on any or just nursing part, although our main aim is to develop a nurse-led intervention. I will explain later how we break down our research project. But let's talk about the innovativeness of our research project. So we implement innovative approaches throughout our project in different aspects of our project. So from the research methodology, data collection, analysis, and interpretation, and also the knowledge exchange and impact to make sure that, again, our findings, our research is beneficial for the public. So in terms of research methodology, we applied the 6 Squid framework. I have another slide about 6 Squid to explain to you a bit like what is actually that, and realist research. And for data collection, we will use the communication through Teams for our interviews and workshop, although we have kind of a little bit leeway if we need to interview, for example, young adults with stroke that they don't have the access to any internet, and we can kind of conduct the interviews face-to-face. But most of our data collection approach will be using Teams. And data analysis, we use a very different approach. And for interpretation, so the research partners, as you can see, of course, we discuss with the core project, but we use their expertise to kind of making sure that our project is really on track. And knowledge exchange and impact, I will explain later what we meant by creative methods. So six steps in quality intervention development, or 6 Squid, is actually a framework used to develop an intervention for public health interventions. So it doesn't necessarily for nursing. So it's for public health interventions originally, but it can be implemented for other types of interventions. So in a summary, so this framework is a systematic evidence-based approach to design effective and rigorous complex health interventions. So the effectiveness is really important because we don't want to develop an intervention that is not relatable to the users. It doesn't really help to tackle their problems. And we know that complex health interventions require different components. So the same intervention will be different if it's delivered by, I don't know, different people with different approach, different values, different interests. So that's why it makes it complex. So another framework that I can mention here that's quite also prominent is the MRC, Medical Research Council's framework for developing an intervention. Slightly different, but it's kind of similar ideas, how they can embed the involvement of key stakeholders there. So the focus will be using this framework. The focus is on collaboration with stakeholders and users throughout the intervention development process. So these are the 6 Squid steps. So that's why it's called 6. For our yarns project, we're not going to touch on number 5, number 6, because we're developing the intervention, but we're not going to test the intervention yet. So we're going to aim that for the future grant or the bigger research project. But what we kind of adopt in our project is number 1, number 4. So we define and understand the problem and its causes. So we need to make sure that the problems are there and it's evidence-based, and identify which causal factors that are modifiable. So because we need to make sure that the intervention needs to work. So how to make sure that that works? We need to know that which the causes that are modifiable. And the mechanisms for change. So that's also important. Again, otherwise it wouldn't be an effective intervention. And clarify how these mechanisms will be delivered. So the 5th part and the 6th part, so probably if we are kind of familiar with kind of pilot study of RCT, pilot study of this intervention, so that's not the focus of our research project. So just to touch on quickly around the realist perspective, realist research. I don't know if here people are kind of more quant researcher or qualitative researcher, but actually realist researcher is kind of in between. So this is kind of to show you how the perspective of realists in research. So we have 3 different layers here. The empirical level is those what we can observe, and then the actual level is what is actually behind it, the mechanism behind it, and then the real level is what is actually make it work, the mechanisms. So to give a simple example, if we walk past a bakery and then we smell nice chocolate cookies, so that's kind of our empirical level. So we smell it, and then we see probably from the window the cookies itself on display. So that's kind of the empirical level. We observe it and we can smell it, so we experience that. And the actual level, we don't know. We can see it's kind of probably the chocolate chips on top, but we don't know for sure it's chocolate chips until we eat it. So we buy it and then we eat it. So we know, oh, actually this is a bit crunchy. So because we know that type of cookies, there's kind of a bit gooey one, there's crunchy one. Oh, this one is quite dry, so it's crunchier. So that's the actual level. So we know after we kind of break it, we need to see what is actually inside that. We taste it. But the real level is kind of what is actually behind in the kitchen. So when they're kind of, what do they actually mix? Is it with 2 eggs or is it 1 egg? I don't know. Is that what type of flour do they use, or what makes it kind of crunchy? What kind of ingredients they use? So that's kind of to give you a quick example of what different layers are. And the realist terminology here, so if you read papers that kind of use the realist research approach, you will see a lot of context mechanism outcomes. But just want to give you kind of a quick example how to make it work. So again, going to the biscuits or the cookies example. So context is the setting where it happens. So the kitchen, in the ingredients that in the kitchen is the equipment that they use. So that's the situation or setting where something happens. And the mechanism is where they kind of mix the ingredients, make the batter. So how they put all the dough inside the oven. So that's the mechanism. So how they kind of make it happen there. And the outcome is the results. So when we eat the biscuits or the cookies, so is it nice? Is it not nice? Is it gooey or is it dry? So that's kind of the outcome. So that's what we're kind of focusing on when we look at the data. We want to know the context, mechanism, and outcome. So probably if a study is a pure RCT, they will kind of explain a bit of context, but the mechanism element is usually not there. So we don't know actually what makes the intervention works, but the outcome is usually reported. Whereas qualitative research tend to kind of focus on the middle, why it happens that way. So probably a little bit of the outcome, but So that's why within the realist research, we kind of mix them together. So we want to know not only the context, so for example, the backgrounds of the young adults, but we want to know what is actually happening, why some intervention is successful for some young adults, but not successful, the same intervention, not successful for a different person. So that's what a reel is about. Just a quick summary of our research projects, a 3-year funded project. So we split it into 3 work packages. So we just finished the first one. So we're currently in the second part. So the first one is realist review. We look at the literature, but with the realist lens against context, mechanism, outcome as our focus. And this, the second one, the realist evaluation, we talk to the people who deliver the interventions. We talk to young adults who experience the intervention. So that's kind of the empirical data part of our research project. And then going back to the UK map, so we collect data from 4 different countries there. And the third one is the development of psychosocial intervention delivered by nurses. So that's when we kind of, after going to kind of an abstract level to get the theoretical concept, and then we will go kind of to the granular aspects again, and then go to a specific setting and then ask if we want to translate this concept or this explanatory model in your setting delivered by nurses, how will you do that? So that's kind of the mechanisms of change that will play a role there. So working with stakeholders, we do that by formally quarterly meetings with the advisory board. With the core team, we meet every week. And we also approach them for individual requests, so not waiting until the formally every quarter meetings. So for example, when we develop our theory, we ask them, does this make sense to you? Does it not make sense? Why? And what do you think that we need to consider? So kind of to keep us on the right track. And we also ask them if they have networks that we can approach to disseminate our findings, to talk about access and everything. And we also ask them to comment on the participant information sheets and consent forms. Also the same for interview schedules. Script for 360 video, so that's part of our knowledge and exchange event. And I have some nice pictures later. And we also brainstorm ideas for funding applications alongside our current project and other needs that we think that will be useful to get their ideas and feedback from. So this is kind of just to highlight the knowledge exchange and impact. So from Yarn's project in Edinburgh, Edinburgh is a festival city. So every August, so anyone that will have the opportunities to go to Edinburgh in August, the city is transformed into venues for different shows. So it can be, I don't know, cabaret, stand-up comedy, music, drama, dances. So we have one event called Covered Dangerous Ideas, that which we have been involved since 2021, and the latest one in 2024. So this one, the Festival of Social Science and Head Injury, that's the last one that we've been involved to. So for the Festival of Social Science, we had the stalls at the train station in Edinburgh. And then we also had a stall in the Royal Commonwealth Pool. So that's kind of the gym, like swimming pool. So we developed a 360 video. It's very short. I think it's 4 minutes to show the experiences of young adult after stroke with aphasia, with communication difficulty. So we asked people who kind of came to our stall to kind of experience that from the perspective of the young adults. So, and I don't know if anyone familiar with VR. So basically, they can kind of look around, but that's they become the young adult themselves in that video. So that's what we did, and what covered dangerous ideas in the past. This is Colin, so the physiologist I mentioned. But this year, Colin involved us, myself and Lisette, there. So it was really nice. And we got this best microphone shares because usually the performers usually only 1 or 2 people, but we are kind of a trio there. It was a very fun experience. We got nice conversation with attendees and discussing their experience as well around brain injury. So we also involved in the Head Injury Information Day by serendipity, actually, because we we have a blog of our research project, and then we got an email from this company called Digby Brown. So they use this as a community responsible CSR event. So we are invited to have a stall there, and then Colin gave a lecture. So probably attended around 150 people working from charities, clinicians, and also young adults, and then, but not necessarily young adults, sorry, because it's kind of open to anyone with brain injury. So carers, families, patients, so they are all there. And we also included, involved some students there, and they really enjoyed that. So yeah, that's the end of my presentation. Again, if anyone is interested in finding out more about our research project, please do get in touch. We can reach out through emails. Probably that's the easiest one. And the last couple of slides are the references. And I believe that the organizer will kind of distribute the slides if you wanted to find more about the papers.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Clarissa. Which one do you prefer, Professor Clarissa or Dr. Clarissa?
Just Clarissa is fine.
Clarissa is fine. Okay, thank you. Yeah, what a wonderful presentation and insightful as well. I believe most of our students, especially from the nursing department, they try to articulate the insight they have received into a question. So while we giving them some time, maybe you can elaborate more about psychosocial dimension in Scotland, especially. So the idea is maybe our students can have like a comparable circumstances about the social.
Yeah, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I can probably pull out our framework that we use to kind of illuminate our data from the first part. So hang on, of our research project, the realist review. We do use a wellness framework to show our findings. But while waiting, it's loading now. Again, psychosocial is beyond anything beyond the biological aspect. So in the first part of our project, we conducted a realist review, and we used this dimension of wellness to help organize our findings, because what we did, we reviewed the literature, and then anything that meet the criteria of interventions that are not focusing on the physical aspect, but the social aspect and the psychological aspect. So we use this dimension of wellness, the physical one, we are not focusing on that because we are not focusing on the physical aspect. But as we can see, there are these spiritual dimensions, emotional, occupational, intellectual, environmental, financial, and social. So I didn't really include the findings of our realist review in the slides because I thought that we were going to focus on the innovativeness and interdisciplinary. But what we found, it's really difficult to kind of pull out specific kind of put in silos specific dimensions because some of them are overlapping. But the financial and environmental is from their background, from their where they live, for example, that also become the aspect also whether they or not they engage with specific program, rehab program, can they pay for it, the financial aspect. So that's why it's kind of a physical one. We can't really ignore it because our human body is mind and body. So because the consequences of the ABI, so for example, do they how are their cognitive levels, their communication skills, are they ready to receive a rehab program? That also play a role, although it's not kind of the main focus of our project itself. But we also acknowledge that as context, if you remember that recipe about the context mechanism outcomes. And yeah, so skill building, intellectual, so for example, the coping skills that they use, emotional mental health, very, very important, very, very highlighted by our experts by experience, because that's the area that's kind of overlooked. Occupational, really, really big aspect as well. How they return to work or study, because that's kind of big part of their identity as a young person. And values and goals here, it's not about religion, but more about the sense of purpose in their life, giving the values, the meaning of their recovery journey. So a good example that is also highlighted by our experts by experience is how they give back to the community by being involved, for example, in a research project as an advisory board, or they can be facilitators in the peer support group, giving back to other young adults after acquired brain injury there. And family and peer social is real crucial aspect. We can't really overlook them. We need to include them in our mind as well, because they're really crucial in supporting. And some people are not fortunate to have good social support from their family and peers. So that's kind of to give bit of ideas around the psychosocial aspect. Is quite big, but it's part of their life. Recover, yeah.
Yeah, it's very broad dimension, yeah, and it's very, yeah. Oh, there's one pop-up question. See, hi, Dr. Clarissa. I wonder what needs to be done in order to recover faster from brain injury. Ooh, okay.
That's a quite difficult question. But we know that time is brain. So when the patient is kind of admitted to the hospital, we need to do as soon as possible the treatment. And it's difficult for me to say what kind of treatment because it depends on the type of the brain injury. But we're trying to, from the perspective of our research project, we're trying to promote the screening of a stroke or brain injury. So we use the acronym BFAS, balance, eyes, and what is the other arm, face drooping, arm, and then speech. We ask them to say your name, and if they can't speak, it might be sign. And then time. So we need to call. In the UK, we call it 999. So we need to call them as soon as possible for them to get to the hospital as soon as possible. And the new balance and eyes, because sometimes people might not have the FAS, the FAS symptoms, but they experience brain injury or stroke. So balance and eyes, we need to see if they kind of have eyes disturbances, vision disturbance, and then they can't balance. So that's also one aspect of the symptoms. So we're trying to kind of promote that, the tool to screen the symptoms and also brain health. So when I showed a picture of our stalls in the train station and the swimming pool, we are not kind of talking about, oh, this is our research project. We're kind of talking about, oh, this is our brain. this is the area that kind of controls our speech, and then if it's kind of damaged, it might impact this aspect. So it's kind of more promoting brain health itself rather than of course we have kind of some flyers from our research project, but we are not focusing on that yet. So because it's the public, so we want to kind of have the conversation, the importance of supporting young adults, and because stroke especially is still considered as old people's disease. So some people are not aware that young adults are also impacted, especially COVID-19. We know that evidence has also shown that it's increasing the stroke in young adults, especially. Yeah, so sorry, I can't really answer how, but if you recognize using the BFAS acronym, take the person as soon as possible to the hospital to get treated. Again, it needs to be depending on the scan, if it's kind of embolus or thrombus, what kind of thing that needs to be given. But the time is brain, so we need to save. So we need to be quick as possible to treat the person.
Yeah, Clarissa, I just imagine that you were in Palembang and doing the same. We will see many, we call it young adults, wandering around with motorbike without proper helmet or without helmet at all. And maybe they still think that their head is harder than the helmet itself. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, very
it's
interesting,
just
important. Maybe we can understand kind of rather than the one from the top, if we remember the iceberg. So that's our experience seeing them roaming
yeah.
around, but actually what's below that iceberg? So uh,
Yeah, yeah. And we
we
see
need to
Mr.
understand.
Denny raise a hand. Please, Mr. Denny.
Yes, Danny.
Okay, thank you, Roma Luis. Okay, hi Clarissa again. Okay. Yeah, I actually want to ask you about some questions, maybe into context about interdisciplinary and innovative research, and also again about the um, stroke that occur in young adults, especially. And maybe in Indonesia, we know that terms of traumatic brain injuries is about the brain injury caused by a trauma. But I've seen in the UK, stroke is included in those category too. Uh, and my first question, make research into interdisciplinary as an innovative ways uh, is quite become challenging because maybe it's because the network research collaborators, and also maybe we should expand our uh, problem questions. So my question is what we should do at first steps to engage the interdisciplinary and innovative research, collaborating with other fields. Is it uh, make the problem more deep with the comprehensive problem solving, or we make the problem broader to have some specific problem solving? Because I think the phenomena in Indonesia, uh, it's quite challenging to have joint research with another field, even though in the uh, health science, I think it more easier to have collaborative. But I think the trend nowadays is about health and informatics, in how we use the Android application uh, to build an early detection or to build a program to rehabilitation of post-stroke. So maybe that's my first questions. What is the first step to make our research broader, especially in interdisciplinary? And my second one, or you wanna ask? I wanna answer the first question.
Yeah, but as thank you. I think it's a very great question, and I do agree that it requires a lot of effort. It is quite a long process. Let's say to build the relationship itself, I would say that's a key, because once you already establish this trust between you and your collaborators, let's say, it's easier. But to get to that stage, you need to nurture the relationships. And as we all know, if you're kind of based in an academic institution, it's so difficult to find time. But that's kind of maintaining communication. I think that's also the key. Although you might not be able to kind of contact them too frequent, but at least you kind of give them updates, what's happening. So it's kind of that's constant communication and being transparent, and not really giving them promises that you can't really keep. Let's say. That's the importance of it, and make the most out of your own network. So it's always useful to think about, let's say, oh, we need the perspective from this discipline, and then you might not have that network, but your colleagues might have it. So be open to have a chat, and even kind of just building the conversation itself. I think that's kind of the first step. Going to conferences, I think it's also very, very crucial. And I think during my PhD, I didn't really think much about it, but now it's not it's not merely about presenting our findings, but actually it's about networking. So the networking part is really, really crucial. Yeah. So I hope that answered your first question. And your
Okay.
second one?
Thank you, Carissa. Yes. And my second question, it's about stroke in young adults, because it's an intriguing topics actually. Because would you share the phenomena in UK especially, in how young adults, especially below 30 or even below 20 years old, uh, have already experienced of post-stroke? It's
So
because about the lifestyles or the diet or the
Mhm.
law of physical exercise. It's maybe
So
my next question.
yeah, different etiologies, I would say.
Mm,
It's difficult for me because I don't have the data,
mm,
but we know for sure, if it's the bleeding, if it's stroke, hemorrhagic stroke, usually the prognosis is really bad.
mm,
So mortality rates are usually higher. But those kind of with the embolus stroke is usually kind of they are the ones surviving, and then because they're still young, their recovery pace is quicker. But based on my kind of chat with people that I know, some of them might have kind of defect or holes in their heart. For example, we know
mm,
that if the flow is not kind of smooth, the blood tends to pool there, and then that becomes a clot. So again, it's difficult to see because we don't have the data, that type of data, like granular data. So stroke is better than acquired brain injury. So stroke has in the UK, there's kind of a specific audit for stroke. So we know for sure the data, how many people experience, for example, hemorrhagic stroke, embolus stroke, and that sort of things. But for acquired brain injury, it's quite difficult because we don't have those type of data, kind of separated data compared to stroke, because stroke is very, very rigorous, let's say, the audit. But Headway, that's the organization looking at brain injury rather than only stroke. So we have another kind of organizations just focusing on stroke. So I think that's the kind of also the challenge in our project, to kind of really represent, to capture the voices, let's say, not only young adults after stroke, but also those who experience brain injury type, because brain injury can be kind of from drowning, for example, or from carbon monoxide, toxicity. So again, we're trying to kind of capture not only young adults who experience stroke, but again, the data is quite difficult to get the separation because of the nature of the data collection, let's say.
And my
Yeah.
last question, actually, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I ate my
Can we take the last question from the pop-up chat,
Okay,
Mr. Denny?
okay.
Okay.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Romo. Thank you, Clarissa.
Yeah, this from Mrs. Irene. I think the challenges research about human brain is ethical clearance. How to conduct research on brain injury patient while taking into account the ethics of human research. So maybe you have experience of this one in Scotland?
Yeah, great question. Ethics, definitely, we need to be responsible as researchers. I would say having the toolkit kind of to see what is the benefits and what are the risks, and then compare it from there. In the UK, so we have we call it the kind of the health system is called the NHS, National Healthcare System. So we have ethics committee within the NHS. So any type of research involving patients, so need to submit their application there. But again, in the UK context, we have resources that you can use as a tool to kind of really look at how we kind of protect the participants while involving them. So in terms of the stroke patients, for example, we need to consider how not to exclude those with communication difficulties, for example, if we want to be truly ethical and inclusive. So in reflecting on our research project, we're trying to do that by involving the carers. So we will accommodate that. So if they need a special kind of communication aids, if they're happy for us to involve the carers, we will involve the carers to kind of help with the communication. So it doesn't mean that we can't really involve them. But talking about ethics, I think the ethics approval process can be kind of a bit procedural, but what is important for us as researchers are our research and integrity, how to maintain the ethical process after getting the approvals. I think that's the very important part. It's not necessarily just to get the paperwork done, but how we really make sure that we protect our participants. But based on my experience, getting the feedback from the ethics committee or from other kind of senior researchers that we seek advice from. So that's really useful to think about how we make sure that it's not for the sake of we deliver our research or we're conducting our research, but it needs to be also beneficial for them and kind of consider what are the benefits, what are the risks. But it's a great question, ethics. I can talk forever about that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Clarissa, once more again for your presentation and discussion. We finally come to the end of our session. So I want to hand it over to Miss Ira and Mr. Denny.
Okay, thank you, Romo Luis, for moderating our last sessions, and thank you to Clarissa to share your experience in research, innovation, and interdisciplinary research, especially in young adults on acquired brain injury. And now we're going forward to certificate handover. We would like to ask for your help, Romo Luis, to hand over the certificate virtually to our speaker, Clarissa.
This is our deepest appreciation for your sharing knowledge with us. Catherine Clarissa, as our invited speaker in this international conference, please humbly accept our certificate.
Thank you very much. It's my great pleasure to share about our research project with all of you here. And thank you again for inviting me.
Okay. Thank you, Romo Luis, and thank you, Clarissa. As Romo Luis mentioned before, maybe you should see on Palembang how the teenager ride their
That's a
bike.
research project for you, Danny. For your PhD.
Sorry. I hope so. So we hope you have visit Bali and also Java Island, and maybe someday you can visit to Sumatra Island in Palembang especially.
Just keep in touch and yeah. Or
Okay.
maybe you visit Edinburgh or other colleagues.
Oh yeah, I'd love to.
Just let me know. I
Okay.
can take you around, especially in August, to see the festival.
Oh, the festival. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Clarissa, and also Romulis again.
Okay.
And all ladies and gentlemen, the presenters, participants, and also research fellow. We are arrived in our last session of our day one international conference of Musikaritas Catholic University. There is some information for the second day of the conference. It's tomorrow. We will begin at 8 a.m. as today. And all the participants, don't forget to fill the presentation link that had given to you in the chat room. So make sure you had fill the attendance form. And also we inform to all presenters on the day two, we have some changing of the schedule because we uh, uh, plan in session 2 at 9:10 a.m. and session 3 to in 2 p.m. We're gonna going forward the session 3. So we have our new schedule for tomorrow. So the pro session 2 will be held in 9:10 to 10:45 a.m. and will be continued to pro session 3 in 10:45 to 12 p.m. We will inform you again in the chat group in the presenter. So we hope you prepared your time and also your slides to present your paper in the parallel sessions. I think that our information, maybe Miss Ira, there is addition of the information.
We would like to remind one more time the participant also the presenters to fill in the attendance list link. Yeah, don't forget that. And please stay updated with the information on our group. Check. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Is it clear?
Yes. Your voice.
Yes.
Very clear.
Okay. Yeah. One more time, we would like to remind all the participants and also presenters to stay updated with all of the information that we share on our chat group. And don't forget to fill the attendance list or the G-form link that we have shared on the chat box. Okay, so we come to the end of the conference, ya Pak Denny, ya?
Yes, Miss Ira.
Yes. So before we close our conference, we would like to again invite Romo Luis to lead the closing prayer, Romo.
Okay,
All right.
let's conclude our day one international conference with saying this. It wait others. Let's do in your own faith. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Gracious God, we are thank you for this wonderful international conference that we have been through from morning until this afternoon. We are also thankful for many presenters, participants, and another audience that share knowledge and insightful experience with us. We also ask your blessing for tomorrow conference, that what we have been prepared for tomorrow will also be in your guide, and with your help, we can be successful and bring many knowledge and insightful experience for all speakers and experience. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you very much, Rob. Okay, dear all participants and also presenters, thank you very much for your great participation for today's conference, and don't forget to attend the conference tomorrow at 8 a.m. So we see you tomorrow. Have a nice day, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah. See you tomorrow.
Thank you all participant and
Thank you for all the
presenter
participants.
and also committee.
Terima kasih Bapak Ibu dan teman-teman. Sampai ketemu besok.
Oke, sama-sama.
Terima kasih semua.
Sampai besok. Semangat.
Link Zoom-nya masih dengan link yang
See you
sama.
later.
Jadi nanti
Thank
kami
you.
informasikan kembali. Thank you.
Yes.
Bye.
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 Izin saya end meeting ya.
Ya, leave meeting.
Ya.
Bye.
Ya.